Hello all, it's the 19th of July 2016 and it's Dan here from Essex, United Kingdom. So yeah, got some really good heat at the moment. It's going to be hitting over 30 degrees apparently today, so that's a thing that I'm very happy about indeed, as are the crops within the polytunnel. But that's not what this video is about. Now, I heard on the radio, and I'm very glad that this has actually made sort of mainstream news. Very sadly, the original Bramley apple tree, which dates back, the variety I believe, until I think it's 1809, is dying, and that is of course very upsetting. And there was a lady tending to this tree, and she's no longer with us, and of course the tree is not being looked after properly. So the tree now has a disease which affects the water supply. So what you need to do if you're interested in this is just have a look on the internet and you will find it. Just put oldest Bramley apple tree disease and you will come up with it. But very upsetting really, because Bramley really is an important apple here in the UK and in all over the world really, but the variety does come originally from the UK. Now, it's a large apple, generally used for cooking, and apple pie, apple sauce. I did make cider out of it one year, although that wasn't particularly brilliant, but that was probably more to do with the fact that I don't know the first thing about making cider. But apple pie, apple crumble, apple sauce, stewed apples, there's so many sort of dishes that you can create out of Bramley apples. Now, of course, this tree has been studied for many, many years, and of course, clones, propagation, grafts, etc. have been taken from it, and there's Bramley apple trees all over the country and indeed all over the world. So we're highly unlikely to sort of be at risk of losing the variety, but you've got to remember that this is the original. So with regards to genetic variation between apples, if grafts were taken, then there shouldn't be a problem. It should be identical to the original sort of tree. But I'm not a scientist, and I don't know if over the years these sort of things may change. I'm not 100% aware. There's probably people watching this that know a lot more about the scientific side of apples than I do. But the importance of this is we must ensure that we learn how to propagate apple trees and ensure that we do not lose any varieties of apple. I mean, 1809, that's a pretty old variety, isn't it? And of course, in the days before refrigeration, the days before fruit coming from all over the world and that sort of thing, this would have been hugely sort of important to sort of life, so to speak, with regards to apples, because apple pie, apple crumble, these really are lovely dishes. And in the days when you could not rely upon sort of fruit being brought in from all over the world, you had to rely on your own sort of steam and your own ways of creating your own desserts and creating sort of preserving your own apples. And of course, apple preservation is a subject for an entirely different sort of video, but Bramley will keep if they're kept cool and sort of wrapped and not allowed to touch each other. You guys know all about that sort of thing. But this once again just highlights the importance of preserving apple varieties, heritage varieties, because one day, I know it's always spoken about, but if there's an oil crisis or another sort of crisis, we will have to learn again how to sort of keep our own varieties of apples going. And of course, just from a historical point of view, losing a historical apple such as that would be upsetting, and in this case it's highly unlikely it's going to happen. But if you search the internet for rare apple varieties, you will find there are many, and they rely upon apple sort of enthusiasts to propagate them, simply because the mainstream consumer does not even know about them. A good sort of website or YouTube channel to check out if you're interested in heritage apples is one called the Stephen Hayes Fruitwise. I learnt a lot from him, and I've had grafts, sort of scions from him over the years, and much of my knowledge on apples and grafting techniques I've actually learnt from him. And he was one of the sort of people that inspired me, sort of gave me motivation to start up my own gardening channel, because he's so passionate about what he sort of does. And we need to ensure that we keep the genetics of apples going, because many of the modern varieties of apples are reliant upon sort of pesticides, fungicides and insecticides, etc., in order to thrive. But of course, the older varieties, there weren't so many of these sort of chemical compounds about in order to preserve them, so they had to have a degree of natural resistance. And if we lose our old varieties and just keep the new ones, which rely upon a lot of pesticides or whatever, and if those chemicals no longer become available or become outlawed, or if there is a crisis and we simply cannot get them, then we will be needing to resort back to the old varieties. And also the fact that, do you really want to be eating all of these sort of chemicals? I don't think we want to be eating, you know, too much of it. Of course, this is another subject entirely with regards to food for the future and feeding oneself, whether we could do it entirely organically. Some people say we can, some people say we can't. I'm sort of in the middle of the issue. I think that the current laziness in today's society and the speed in which we all live excuse me, is reliant upon largely unnatural means in order to maintain this, and unnatural means in order to produce the food that we eat. So with regards to this, check out the report, realise how sort of, you know, historically upsetting this probably is. I mean, the fact that a sort of 200-year-old tree is on its way out is really not, you know, not a nice thing, although maybe inevitable. And learn about propagating apple trees and fruit trees. I learned how to do it to a very basic level anyway. If you search my videos, I believe I have a sort of playlist with regards to grafting. If you're interested, check it out. There are far more knowledgeable people than myself on this subject. I'm, at the end of the day, just a sort of all-round gardener who has a passion for gardening. But check it out, learn about it. I think I've said enough. You guys understand where I'm coming from. Enjoy the sun. Speak soon.